Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Watching the Boxes. I am your host, Mike Catron, and my co-host here is joining me again, Tyler Watts. What's up, Tyler?
Hey, Mike, how's it going, man?
It is going, I guess, good. I'm focused a lot more on the NBA. My Bulls depression has moved on. I'm not so depressed when I'm watching the NBA as I was a couple weeks last week. So I'm feeling a lot better.
Well, they're going to upset the Cavs tonight, right? And then you're going to be 100% back to normal.
Well, they're playing the Warriors tonight. They're the Warriors.
I said the Cavs, didn't I?
You got the Cavs on your mind. You got LeBron on your mind.
Damn you, LeBron. You're infiltrating my mind.
You got angry LeBron on your mind. What's with LeBron suddenly at the age of 32 throwing fits and shade at people like he's a kid? It doesn't make any sense.
LeBron is just an interesting character.
Those are
in the sense that he can do whatever he wants, I think. Or he thinks he can.
Certainly thinks he can do whatever he wants, and sometimes he does, and that's something to behold. Definitely something, even as one of the most staunch LeBron haters, I can finally appreciate, peak LeBron. So
I will say they looked real good tonight, dominating the Pacers and scoring 132 points.
I tried to watch a little bit of the first half of that. It was a lot closer in the first half. And then
that 40-18 third quarter pretty much solved it away for the Cavs.
That kind of hurts. The Pacers aren't good. I don't care what anybody's saying about the Pacers. They aren't good. I don't know how they're above 500 right now, because the East is terrible. That's how they're above 500.
They have like 3 or 4 good players, I think, but they're not. I don't know that they're a great team.
I like Miles Turner a ton. I'd say they name a team with 2, I guess, luckier picks than the Pacers, with Miles Turner and then obviously Paul George. In recent times, it's hard to find.
It'd be the Kings with Isaiah Thomas, but he doesn't play for the Kings anymore.
Well, they're so stupid. They just traded him away. They made him deliver pizzas, and he was like, I got to get out of this city.
But he is amazing now, so good on him. Good on him and his pizzas.
Good on him. Screw Sacramento. It is sad because Sacramento was my 90s West Coast team when the Bulls were my early 2000s. Late 90s, early 2000s West Coast team when the Bulls were so bad. It was hard to watch. I needed one team that was winning something to hold me over.
Just don't look at the score of that Warriors Bulls game, or the depression may set in.
I'm not going to do it. Jimmy's out, Wade's out, so there's a 50-50 chance we win the game because the Bulls are weird. It's Golden State. I'm sure the Golden State will smoke us per usual.
Well, I mean, you're not alone in that category, at least.
What do you got going on? Any interesting NBA stuff happening in your side of the country?
Well, there's always interesting NBA stuff to talk about. DeMarcus Cousins got 16 technical fouls already. I mean, that's always something interesting to chat about, isn't it?
Yeah, let's get right into kind of segue off against the Bulls. Boogie got real mad. Got a technical with about 1 second left in the game, putting him at 16. This basically means he's suspended for tonight's game against Boston, which is horrible news because I'm pretty sure Boston will win that one, and I need the Kings to win some games. Bulls need that draft pick. But is this affecting your rest of the year value for Boogie Cousins in fantasy?
Here's the crazy thing about it. Okay, so once you get to the 16, you get an automatic suspension, and then every even number technical foul after that, you get another 1-game suspension. So 18, 20, 22, 24.
That's rough.
Well, what's crazy is if he keeps on his current pace, which is basically getting a technical foul every 3 games, I mean, there's 30 games left for the Kings.
Pretty much,
So,
yeah.
so that could be a lot of suspensions piling up real fast here.
He's got 16 and 50. Yeah, play those numbers. He could sit out 5 games, 6 games, somewhere in that range. Also, take a look at what happened last year at the end of the year. Remember, suspiciously and suddenly, Boogie was only going to play during home games. They're like, Boogie's only going to play at home. It's like, what? Yeah, DeMarcus is only going to play at home games. What is that? You can do that? That's a thing? And then he played 2 home games, sat out for an away game in Portland, played against Washington at home, but then sat out a home game because they were trying to keep that draft pick. If they're hovering around that 9-10 seed, I guarantee the exact same thing happens again this year, so they don't give up that pick.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it. I mean, I think they know they're not a championship team. So, I mean, what's the sense of making the playoffs if you're not really a team that can contend? Other than you get that little bit of playoff revenue, there's not really any greatness in that. So I could see it happening.
So let's combine the fact that there's a decent chance they try to tank, and the only way to tank, like guaranteed way to tank, is to not have the only good player on your team play. Rudy Gay out for the year, so it does seem like they're not even going to come close to playoffs. Boogie might sit out the last couple of weeks of the season, or might play sporadically through the last weeks of the season. Every 2 technical fouls, or every 2, is it technicals or just or ejections?
It's every 2 technicals.
So if he gets 2 technicals in one game and he gets ejected, he gets suspended for the next game.
Yes, sir.
Oh God, that's even worse. This could escalate quickly. If I'm Boogie, I'll just go. What's the record? Like, he's got to be close already. Just go for the record, man.
Well, what's crazy is, I mean, if you look throughout his career, he's been right around that 16 mark every single season. So this guy gets himself in the same predicament every year. He's already the fastest player to earn the ejection. 52 games is the fastest anyone's ever earned the first game suspension.
In the record books, that's good.
So he's got a shot to break that record of most in a season. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but he's already ahead of the pace.
See, there was a time where you could blame the management, you could blame the coaching there, you could blame the toxic environment in Sacramento and the ownership that has no idea what the hell it's doing. But now all these story after story after story is just leaking out. And there was actually, I think Zach Lowe was talking to somebody about some article that he wrote. He got like an in-depth interview with DeMarcus and interviewed other guys on the team. And DeMarcus might be one of the worst NBA like attitudes, personalities in the league, or maybe just in the last decade. Everyone's walking around on eggshells, or just not pissed DeMarcus off. And man, the guy could be the best player in the league if he really wanted to. You hope he matures in the similar fashion Zach Randolph does, but from everything you read about it, it's just at some point you just got to go, hey man, this is on you now. I know Sacramento sucks, but this is on you.
Well, and I mean, I don't know if you saw the big ESPN piece that they did about, they did the in-depth and they said about, the Mike Malone thing and the whole fact that, that they thought Malone reached him and then the front office fired him. And then ever since then, like, they haven't really gotten a coach that's earned Cousins' trust and all that. And I mean, I get it in some sense, but in some other senses, like, Cousins just has to learn to not be such a child. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What does screaming and yelling obscenities at the ref do for you at some point? Like, it just gets you in trouble. Just quit doing it, man.
Yeah. It's weird. I mean, I think a change of scenery has to happen. The trade Boston for like every single player on their team. They would do it, or all those picks. Why not? That's the only way you're going to get those. The only way you're going to get good players through the draft in Sacramento. So why not get all those Brooklyn picks and just call it a year or call it a decade for Sacramento?
Well, and here's the crazy thing I think too is, you know, I think the whole him being difficult lowers his trade value in a lot of
Yeah,
ways because teams don't want to give up the farm for a player who might wreck their franchise.
exactly. There's just why would you want to bring someone who's toxic into an environment where you're already winning?
So he may be the one player in the league where like it's hard to put him in a bucket, right? Like he's so talented and there's no other player in the league that can do some of the things he can do at his size.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he may just never be on a good team, which is sad.
So speaking of having Boogie on a team, if he's on your fantasy team right now, knowing what you know about his temperament, about his suspensions, and about the fact that Sacramento wants that draft pick and they got to be in the bottom 10, are you trying to move him? When are you trying to move him? And then after you answer those, we're going to play an early trade game. Who you trading Boogie for?
Um, am I trying to move him? That's always a difficult question with Boogie because Boogie is kind of a different beast. He's doing a ton of playmaking this year. He's averaging almost 5 assists a game. You're getting the big points. The field goal percentage isn't exactly the best for a big man, but he shoots relatively good free throw percentage for a big guy. He's giving you good steals, good blocks. Boogie's always a hard guy to trade because I always feel like maybe you don't get the value back you should for him in
He's
fantasy.
he's under for sure. I think I've had him a handful of years over the last few seasons, and you don't often even get anyone wanting to trade for him. Like you don't, I rarely see a hey man, yeah, how about what do you think about Isaiah Thomas for Boogie? Like no one's like reaching out to you to trade for Boogie Cousins. But when you have it on a team, and night after night. He is probably the most frustrating guy to watch if you're watching like active box scores because you'll like look at it'll be halftime at the Sacramento game and you'll be like, man, Boogie's got 32 points. This is crazy. Like this is gonna be one of the greatest games of all time, and then he has like 38 points at the end of the game. And you're like, what happened? What happened here? And he didn't even get ejected. Like what happened? But I mean, you look at some of his stats this year 42 and 14, 25, 12 and 10. Just recently 32 and 12, 46 and 15. The guy's a monster. He's hitting 3-pointers, almost 2 a game, which is silly. I think he's probably one of the more underrated fantasy players that you can get.
Well, and they're running so much of the offense through him this year. That like when he misses a game, that Kings team is just really strange to watch. It's a really stark contrast because he does so many things on the offensive end.
Do you think he's at peak value right now, or does someone who owns Boogie have enough time between now and the All-Star break to kind of wheel and deal and see if anyone will take on the Boogie?
Um, I think that he's probably at his peak right now. It'd be interesting to see how the suspension thing affects people. I'm not even sure most people know that every 2 technical fouls now he gets suspended. And so I think if people do know that, some people might be like, well, I'm not touching him.
Yeah, I think if he does end up getting 2 more technicals before the All-Star break, everyone's going to realize that and they're going to go, oh, and then his value's going to drop. So somewhere between now and those next 2 technicals, I think is definitely peak Boogie value,
which could be Friday night. I mean, let's face it. I mean, they play
Yeah.
again on Friday night, and he could easily get 2 technicals in that game.
Yeah, that'd be fun. Yeah, I think over the next couple weeks, the goal is to move Boogie. So let's play who you trade Boogie for. Right into a trade game early in the show. This is a tough one, I think, because like you said, people don't really appreciate Boogie, fantasy wise, and he's also kind of like you said, an interesting guy, a center who doesn't shoot a high free throw or a high field goal percentage, but a center who hits 2 threes a game. So Let's see. Let's see. I'll throw one out. Maybe you throw one at me. Oh, who would you get? All right, this is a boring guy for an underrated guy. Knowing what you know about DeMarcus, would you trade straight up Al Horford for DeMarcus?
Ooh, I think I'm going to stick with the Marcus, given the choice.
Yeah, why would you do that? So right now for the season, Al Horford is ranked 23rd. DeMarcus is ranked 12th.
I just think that DeMarcus is Al Horford, but a little bit better version, maybe in some ways. I think DeMarcus just is going to give you a little bit more in so many more categories that I think I just want that upside. Because maybe his most technicals in a season are 17, so maybe somehow he finds a way to just stop binning the technicals and plays it out.
Yeah, I kind of don't disagree with that. Al Horford is not enough, but Al Horford would be a nice replacement piece, I think, for Boogie. So if you could get Al Horford and another starter back, that would improve your team. That would be great going into the playoffs, knowing that you might not get a lot of total games out of Boogie down the stretch.
I got two ones I want to ask you.
All right. Okay.
Both centers. Okay.
Okay.
First one, Marc Gasol.
Ooh. I got a soft spot for Marc Gasol. Another underrated fantasy player. Oh, Marc Gasol. Marc Gasol is having a really nice year. I don't think I've talked about him in a while. I don't think anyone's talked about him in a while.
He's a guy who's just unsexy, right? I mean, like no one ever gets too pumped about Marc Gasol, unfortunately.
It's fairly boring, yet he just upped his scoring from 16 points a game to 21 points a game from last season. So I don't know why people aren't a little bit more excited about that. Because he's shooting and making about a 3.5 a game.
And in some ways, he's not the typical center in that he's only averaging 6.1 rebounds a game.
Yeah, you're almost cutting your rebounds in half, and to me that really hurts. So if you're being carried by Boogie in rebounds, I think you gotta make a note of that and get someone if you're getting someone like Al Horford or Marc Gasol back to maybe have someone throw another rebound guy in the mix of this. This would probably be the lowest I would go for DeMarcus. Let's say I can't get anything. No one wants to trade me for DeMarcus Cousins. And one guy's like, you know what? I'll do Marc Gasol. If you're banking on, Boogie missing, 10, 12 games down the stretch, I would make that trade. I would try to get more though. This might be the lowest I would go on a straight up trade. I think you can get Marc Gasol and another standard league player for Boogie Cousins. Boogie is just that good. But it's good.
And I will say this about Gasol. Gasol is going to give you the assist too that not a lot of other centers are going to give you, that are kind of comparable there with Cousins. And so that was kind of why I wanted to mention that name. Is he's a little bit other than the huge drop in rebounds, he's a little bit of an analog. And I also wanted to give Marc Gasol a shout out for shooting 40% on his 3-pointers this year after virtually taking no 3-pointers in his career.
That just goes to show you someone wasn't thinking outside the box up until this year. The Warriors really have changed the entire league.
No doubt about that. All right, ready for man number 2?
Yes.
It is Utah Jazz center Rudy Gobert.
Ooh. So Rudy Gobert, kind of a straightforward, old traditional center. With the way his stats are, his rebounds are pretty great. His blocks are also great. His field goal percentage is great. He doesn't shoot a good free throw percentage. Doesn't really do anything else in the counting stats. He almost gets a steal a game, which has helped his value this year. I would have to say no to that trade. And this is why. Boogie is almost averaging 30 points a game. Rudy Gobert, you're getting 13 points a game back. So
Okay.
if you're in first in categories in points, all right, maybe you can make that trade. That actually kind of makes a little bit more sense. You're getting more blocks out of this trade, but you're losing 2 threes a game. You're losing a ton of points, and you're also losing some steals and some assists. I think you're losing more than you're gaining.
I'll amend my offer to Rudy Gobert and Robert Covington for DeMarcus Cousins.
Ooh. Why you always? I like Bob Covington too. I don't like this. Covington's a little risky.
Well, DeMarcus Cousins is a little risky. I mean, come on now. Live by the sword, die by the sword. Let's do this.
I don't know. I would definitely consider it long and hard and him and haw about it for at least 2 days. I think I would try to get someone else. I would get someone better. I try to get someone better than Robert Covington back.
And I think though that this trade kind of hits the nail on the head in this sense.
It's right on that edge, I think. It's
and
a pretty good trade.
It's probably all you're gonna get. If you say I want X player better than Robert Covington, the other person's probably gonna be like no.
And you say, what if you said still hurt Avery Bradley? They probably say no, I would think, but.
And that's what I mean. I always think that Cousins just gets a little undervalued, and maybe then no one wants to watch Sacramento is the thing. Maybe that Cousins just gets the rap of being a bad guy, whether he is or not. I mean, I don't know him personally, so I don't know. But it always seems like anytime I have Cousins and I try to trade him, he just gets slightly undervalued, and so I usually end up keeping Cousins for just that reason.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know DeMarcus Cousins is ranked higher than Russell Westbrook in fantasy for 9cat across the board. So just letting you know that's how good DeMarcus Cousins is.
Well, that's because Russell Westbrook just turned the ball over again, didn't he?
Yeah, he is averaging about 5.5 turnovers a game, and that is pretty much the only reason. But still, just would like everybody to know if you're playing 9cat, roto leagues,
you did make
technically better.
You did make a good segue into something that I forgot to mention on the last show that I wanted to mention, and that was Avery Bradley, who is going to miss the next 2 weeks.
Yeah,
with an injury, and obviously we've seen what the rotation looks like. I mean, he's been out for a little while, but I wanted to mention it just in saying that if you're hoping Avery Bradley is going to be back sometime soon, it's definitely going to be after the All-Star break before he comes back, pretty much.
Are you annoyed by this? Is this if you're an Avery Bradley owner, are you just, well, I guess I'll just wait it out. There's nothing I can do about it. But if you're an Avery Bradley buyer, would this be a good time to move on Avery Bradley?
It is a good time to move on Avery Bradley. The one thing I'm worried about, do you know what the injury is? It's an Achilles.
And those don't often heal great.
It's kind of starting to smell like that Mike Conley one. Was it last year or 2 years ago where they kept saying, "Oh, he's going to come back.
I think Mike Conley had like 20 injuries last year down the stretch.
Well, and they kept saying he's coming back, and then like he'd never play, and then like it got to the end of the season, and they were like, "Oh well, he's just out.
I guess he's not going to play." Like, well, yeah, I guess there's no more games left, so he's not going to play.
And that is my kind of big worry here, and one of the reasons I wanted to mention it is I'm a little worried. So if I can get pretty good value for him in a trade, I think I might move. Just because it's an Achilles.
With the amount of games left, I don't think I'm terribly afraid of taking on the risk from Avery Bradley. I think I would make that trade with you. I would try to get something. I would try to get Avery Bradley from you for sure. They are giving Jaylen Brown more minutes, and Marcus Smart has been playing around 30 minutes a game while Avery Bradley's been out. Jaylen Brown's actually been starting for the last 6-7 games or so, and they've won all those games, by the way. So
and here's I'll say this about Jaylen Brown: the fantasy numbers haven't been great, but he looks like a surprising player, I think.
yeah, I think he could. I think he's got an NBA game in him. He would really good on the Bulls with those Brooklyn picks for Jimmy Butler. That'd be fine.
Mike's Dream World.
Listen, he's an asset. I'd much rather have Jimmy Butler than Jaylen Brown. Probably for their whole career too. Jaylen Brown could be pretty great, but he's no Jimmy Butler.
I read a trade piece, and they said that the Celtics trade for Jimmy Butler and they give up Avery Bradley in that pick. That Brooklyn pick. And I thought to myself, like, would Chicago do that?
It's a little light.
That's kind of what I thought. But I was like,
a little light, just a little light. See, I actually have been streaming Marcus Smart in a lot of leagues while Avery Bradley's been out, and I've picked him up in a few standard leagues to get the steals. I'm trying to make a run on steals in a couple leagues, and so far I have not been disappointed. Marcus Smart isn't terribly, killing it by any means, but in the last month he is ranked 111th on average, and that's standard league relevant. His field goal is terrible.
I was going to say, is this a dog that ever gets a new trick, or is Marcus Smart at this point?
Well, I don't think I would say that at 22. At 22 years old, a lot of guys at 22 though don't magically change their entire game, but when it comes to improving your shot, I think that's one of the things that when people work on it, sometimes it does work wonders, and it does improve a ton of their ability. And if this guy could just bump up to, what I consider NBA relevant at being over 40% with his defense and his ability to actually distribute the ball fairly well, he would be a really good fantasy player. He'd be a really good NBA player. But
that I think
know.
you nailed it though. I think that even 40% is such an improvement that is it ever really going to get higher than that?
Yeah, that's a whole 5%, about 4% from this year. So I guess if you're looking at between last year and this year, he has technically improved about 2%, about 1%.
So
but
my point being,
I don't think he's going to do it though.
Right? He's always going to be a detriment in that category, no matter even at 40%. Like he's a negative in that category.
Yeah, definitely.
So he's going to be decent rebounds, decent assists for a shooting guard, and good steals, and not much else. And decent threes, maybe. He could maybe get up there. He's actually shooting 31% this year, which is a lot better than the 25 he shot last year.
Yeah, it baffled me to see him, a handful of games hitting multiple threes a game, and I was like, what's going on here? Shooting a lot more threes, which probably doesn't help his percentages, but if he can become a 3-and-D guy, which is probably what he is trying to become by shooting more threes, he'll have a long career in this league. He's definitely an NBA player, so he's caliber enough, I think, to either be a guy off the bench in a rotation, or even, if he's hitting threes, he could start for a lot of teams. Man, there doesn't seem to be any hope for his shot, but I'm willing to ride him in fantasy simply because his steals, he's one of the few players that you could find on the waiver wire who could average 2 steals a game for the last month, which is exactly what he's done.
And in deep leagues, a lot of times I'll draft him real late in the draft, just because he's an asset in a couple categories there. He's usually an asset in assists and steals. Which I mean, in deep league, sometimes you got to pay for some cracks, right? You need that boost.
Yeah, he's kind of a sneaky good late round for bigger leagues. And there's another guy who is recently injured, who is also a sneaky good late round pick for deeper leagues, and that is Evan Turner. Evan Turner is out with a fractured right hand, predicted to come back March 15th, mid-March, 5 to 6 weeks. That is not good for anyone who is owning Evan Turner. If you were in a big enough league to own Evan Turner. But I think this is a little bit more interesting than your average guy who is either in your drop zone or not even on a team in a standard league, because unlike a lot of guys who aren't, owned in standard leagues or owned in a lot of standard leagues, Evan Turner plays about 28 minutes a game. And that means 28 minutes is going somewhere on Portland. So what do you think the fantasy impact is for on Portland with Evan Turner being out?
Oh, it has got to be the return of 30-minute games for Mo Harkless, doesn't it?
Oh, can't you be Mo Harkless? I love Mo Harkless.
Was that a song parody? Was that?
Can't you be Mo Harkless?
Weird Al now.
I'm listen. I am a huge Kanye backer. Nothing he can do is wrong in my eyes. Even talking to a terrible president. So I am parodying a great Kanye song because Mo Harkless is good enough to be parodied in a Kanye song. He was already playing, though, 29 minutes a game.
But he wasn't recently.
That's true. That's true. He's been kind of on the outs in Portland. Aminu has been moving up just a tad over there, but I feel like neither one of them has really been impressing me in the last month or so.
He's been bad, but in 30 minutes, I think he gets you, just enough, that block, that steal, just enough to kind of be good in your standard leagues. So I'm excited for Mo Harkless because now Mo Harkless seems like he's viable again in a standard league.
Rest of the year, I'm gonna throw these guys at you. Al-Farouq Aminu or Mo Harkless.
Oh God, that's always the conundrum, isn't it?
They're two very different guys, so it's hard to say in a vacuum because one might fit your team better than the other one.
Okay, so in a vacuum, I'm assuming is what you're asking me.
Has to be in a vacuum.
I am going for Mo Harkless, just because I think the block and the steal combined are going to be a little more for Harkless, and he's going to give you a few more points.
I completely agree. Mo Harkless at 29 minutes a game or Alan Crabb at 30 minutes a game.
Alan Crabb is only going to give you points, so unless it's a points league, I'm going to take Mo Harkless.
I think that's another accurate statement. Mason Plumlee or Mo Harkless.
I have a soft spot for Mason Plumlee.
I really like Mason Plumlee, especially with the assists that he's been kind of weird in a weird spot lately, but I still like him a lot.
There I am probably going to go for Mason Plumlee unless his terrible free throw percentage is a detriment to my team. And then I will have to go for Mo Harkless.
I think at 30 plus minutes, like you're saying with Mo Harkless and his track record, playing heavier minutes, I think you can go Mo Harkless.
I could see that. I think Mo Harkless is a top 75 player the rest of the way.
Wow. Write that one down, everybody. Feel free to tweet at Tyler Watsy4444 about his bold top 75 prediction for Mo Harkless.
Hey, man, I've been making bold calls all week on the show, man. Yeah, that's what the people want to hear.
The people need boldness in these dark times. Let's see. What other I got really bad news.
Oh.
Really, really bad news. A horrible injury.
Oh, I thought you were going to say your cat died.
No. God, I hope not.
Well, you were making it seem like it was something real bad. So,
well, this is worse for some people. Out for the year, the one, the only, Dragon Bender, the coolest name ever.
are we sticking with the year?
I'm sticking with the year. I'm sticking with the year.
Well, David Aldridge
He's having surgery, from what I've read.
Did you see the David Aldridge report?
I did not.
I saw this morning. Okay, some Croatian newspaper website. I'm not sure what they were.
Respect.
It was like a Croatian outlet. Said that he was out for the season with a surgery. David Aldridge just reported a little bit ago that he's out 4 to 6 weeks with an arthroscopic surgery on Wednesday.
Okay, so they're just cleaning him out, it sounds like.
So, I mean, that puts him to return. I mean, not much fantasy value, but obviously that's probably before the end of the regular season.
So I have a relevant fantasy question. Cooler name, Dragon Bender or Bismack Biyombo?
Dragon Bender, man. He's the dragon.
Yeah, Dragon Bender. Yeah. You can scream. You can scream Bismack Biyombo. That's a cooler name to yell.
Well, you can scream at anything you want, can't you?
Yeah, I usually do.
Oh man, that took my mind to a bad place. I won't even mention what I was thinking. So,
are you thinking about me and Cody Zeller in that ice bath again?
Yes, again. You brought it back.
That's one of these days. That should be one of those like crappy auction. Oh, so the Celtics are having a silent auction. One ice bath with Cody Zeller. What? No one's bid on this. Perfect. This is mine.
That's mine.
So yeah, Dragon Bender. If you got Dragon Bender in your on your team in a league, you're either in a I would say you're in a deep keeper league, or you're in one of the deepest leagues people play in.
So here's my fantasy relevant question. This is a dynasty league. And the penalty to keep players is relatively insignificant. You got Dragon Bender, and I've got Marquise Chris, and I say I want to know, will you trade me Dragon Bender for Marquise Chris?
Do I have an IR spot?
You have one, but someone's clogging it.
Son of a bitch. Where am I at in the standings right now?
We're both on the fringe of the playoffs.
We're both simmering around the playoffs. I think that's a pretty good. It's a pretty good trade. Note, this actually could be a little detrimental. I believe Marquise Chris was ejected this evening. So he's, I'm not sure if I want that kind of animosity in my fantasy locker room.
Him and Cousins will be going at it in the corner. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah, I don't need that. I don't need him on the team with Cousins. I don't even want to know what's going to happen. I don't think so. I think I would stick with Dragon Bender because neither one of them are relevant. I think this year, even if Marquise Chris gets more minutes with Dragon Bender out for the year, so he grabs some of his minutes. Marquise Chris has had the occasional pretty interesting game. I think if you look at long-term ceiling, Dragon Bender has the more potential. But I don't think if someone made that trade, I don't think you're in the wrong or stupid for doing it. You just like Marquise Chris better. That's fine.
Well, and I've found it interesting. Like, I don't disagree with you that I think the Dragon Bender's ceiling is a lot higher, but they're both 19, and it seems like the Suns think Marquise Chris is the better player right now.
Yeah, and that is kind of interesting to note that at 19 he's playing meaningful minutes for Phoenix today.
And Dragon Bender isn't, even though he was I guess I shouldn't say much higher, but higher draft pick.
He was more hyped as well. Maybe I am living in a hyped train. clouded world with Dragon Bender, and I'm just seduced by his super cool name. But Dragon, I think I like Dragon Bender's all around potential for fantasy.
I don't know that we've seen enough Bender to know what he's going to be or what he could be against NBA competition. I just don't think it's a crazy idea that in 4 years' time, there's probably a 35 to 40% chance that Marquise Chris is actually the better NBA player than Dragon Bender.
I would even venture it's 50-50 at this point. I mean, Marquise Chris does have the ability to hit threes. He can pull down some boards. He gets some steals. His steal and block is hovering around the 1-1 mark. Even in limited minutes. So
and he's kind of what Dragon Bender was hyped to be, right? So far, I mean, like
yeah, I can see that.
So it's just something to watch going forward.
If you're going for the playoffs, I think you make that trade. If you're sitting at the bottom of your league, it's a toss up, 50-50.
Well, and I think you maybe go for Bender if you're at the bottom, because if you're at the bottom, you apparently need someone to get you back to the top.
Yeah, you need someone to force your future seasons for your keeper league into something worthwhile.
So you want the upside. I mean,
I quite frankly thought we would not even talk about Dragon Bender, but that was a real fantasy conundrum for Dragon Bender.
I'm always asking the hard-hitting questions, Mike. You know this.
I could talk about Keeper Dynasty Leagues, and we probably should talk a little bit more about Keeper Dynasty Leagues every once in a while, because those are my favorite leagues to play in.
Those are the greatest leagues, are they not?
It's hard to find a right group of people to play in. You got to have a dedicated group of people, but when you find a dedicated group of people to play a Keeper League in, I don't think there's a better way of playing. It adds another level of strategy. There's a certain person who has been waiting for Giannis to emerge since his rookie year, and everybody hates that person, and probably will for the next career of Giannis.
Next 20 seasons.
Yeah, for the next 20 years of his life. We're gonna have to amend the rules to make having keepers worse for you. So the league isn't ruined. But we've already done that before because I had Steph Curry as a keeper my rookie year. We had to amend the rules, so I didn't win the league every single year as well. Well,
that just doesn't seem right.
Yeah, this league has every 3 years we have a rules summit, so everybody gets together and votes on rules.
And we all totally try to screw over the guy who's won the last 2 years.
It's all political. It's wonderful. It's a lot of lobbying, a lot of texting people, or taking people out to drinks and talking shit about somebody and be like, we should do something about this, man. What about raising the keeper values? Like, oh, that's a great idea. It's like a really terrible Game of Thrones that no one would watch.
All right, so we got to talk about something from today's action. It happened in the Miami Heat Milwaukee Bucks game.
Oh, okay.
No. It's not the signing of Michael George Hunt. I know you were looking forward to talking about that, but he did not play.
I have 3 pages of notes on that, but if you want to just skip right through it, fine.
It was the return of Chris Middleton for 15 glorious, amazing minutes.
There he is, the guy everyone's been talking about nonstop for probably a month and a half. I did not catch any action of this game, so I probably will need to go and look at highlights, because when it comes to guys returning off of a long injury, I like to give the visual test.
Ooh, but something else happened that could make Chris Middleton even that much more juicy, Mike.
You are right.
You want to tell everyone what happened? I don't want to get down on myself now.
So in also more horrible news a lot of horrible news tonight, worse than Dragon Bender. Jabari Parker went down. Looks like a knee sprain. Did not return to this game tonight. The people, all the peoples on Twitter, all the streets are saying, did not look good. Really did not look good. This could be an extended outage. This could be something more serious. We got to wait and see.
It's worth mentioning they said the same thing with Zach LaVine the night it happened. He said knee sprain, evaluated tomorrow, MRI, boom, out for season, torn ACL.
You also got to remember, a lot of these people also, every time Anthony Davis dives for a ball, they assume he's out for the rest of the year too. So there's a lot of leeway back and forth of who might be right in this one. Definitely a wait and see, don't panic kind of moment. But not great for Jabari Parker owners, especially since he was having, to me, an incredible year, definitely blowing away the value you got from probably where you drafted Jabari this year.
Well, and a lot of people said that when Middleton gets up to his usual minutes, which granted could be March, or before that happens, a lot of people said
after All-Star break at the very earliest.
Well, and a lot of people said though that what's going to hurt his value from last season's top 30 numbers is the emergence of Jabari Parker. Well, cross Jabari Parker's name off the list now, perhaps. Not much is stopping Middleton from being that number 2 guy on that team.
Yeah, I think that definitely bumps his I guess it wouldn't be a ceiling because a ceiling is a ceiling, but it would be his usage rate, I guess, which would help his overall averages. I didn't see the game tonight. Looking at the box score, I'm not impressed, but 15 minutes is nothing to read into too much.
And getting your feet wet after 4 months of not playing any basketball is usually never pretty, is it?
No, it's going to take some time. Like I said, he's probably not even going to get into the swing of things until after the All-Star break. It could be even longer than that. They are preparing him for what I would assume is a late playoff push from in March into April, and hopefully make the playoffs and making some noise in the playoffs with a healthy team. Hopefully Jabari Parker is healthy. They can get that 8 seed. They can upset the Cavs in the first round. The Bulls can beat them in the final in the Eastern Conference Finals, and we'll get smoked by the Warriors.
So, I will say it was a bad game tonight, right? I'm hoping for 2 more from Chris Middleton. I'm hoping he does not do much in the next 2 games, and if I don't own him, that's when I'm moving.
I think I'm willing to give him more. I'm willing to give him more games.
No, I'm not moving on. I'm moving to acquire him.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you're saying
if I don't own him, I'm giving him 2 more games. I'm hoping he stinks in both of them.
Yeah, this is
I'm snatching him.
It's kind of exactly what you want him to have, a couple dud games, and then you make that trade. Go listen to the last episode, everybody, where we do talk about who you would like to trade for Chris Middleton. As an excellent plug, you can find all of our shows on #basketball.com, our wonderful publisher. I did notice that Josh Richardson did not play tonight for the Heat. So we'll see when he returns. Thought he was returning.
He's always snaking us, man. He always keeps saying he's coming back, and then he just never plays.
Poor James Johnson. That guy's great.
Now today's thing is he's targeting a return before the All-Star break, which I don't know what that means.
That could mean tomorrow. It probably does not.
That is what I'm thinking.
Let's see what else is going on around the league. There is the return of Lance Stevenson in Minnesota.
Okay, so here's a serious question. How does that guy always make the front page?
He's a fun guy because he's unpredictable. He's like a catalyst. You just don't know when something's going to set him off. He's kind of like the reason everybody kind of likes watching Dion Waiters, because the guy's got weird confidence he's kind of a loose cannon. You don't know what he's going to say. You don't know what he's going to do. Lance is like double Dion Waiters. You just don't. When Lance is blowing in LeBron's ear in the playoffs, is awesome. He had that incredible season with the Pacers, and then he looked like crap in Charlotte, and now he's out of the league, but now he's back in the league. I mean, he's nothing but interesting.
Okay, so serious question now. Name the times Lance Stephen has been standard league relevant in fantasy.
3 months during the Indiana season, which was 3 years ago.
2013, 2014.
Yeah.
That's it, right?
And then everyone went out and drafted him when he went to Charlotte because they're like, oh, this guy's going to be averaging a triple-double in Charlotte. That's how hyped people were about Lance Stevenson. It's kind of embarrassing when you think about it.
He barely averaged a triple single in Charlotte.
Yeah, it was really bad in Charlotte. That did not work.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna put this one in the bag, and I'm gonna tie it up real tight, and I'm throwing it right in the trash can.
Not interesting.
Do not touch Lance Stevenson in your standard leagues. If your league has 20 teams and 20 roster spots, maybe you pick up Lance Stevenson.
I don't even know if you do it then. I would talk up Lance Stevenson a whole lot though, just on the off chance someone in your league picks him up, and then you can just kill that guy for like 3 years. Just be like, remember that time you picked up Lance Stevenson on that 10-day contract in Minnesota? You're an idiot.
He could play though. I mean, he could actually get some minutes. He's
played.
Only got to beat out Brandon Rush to play some decent minutes, right?
He played. It looks like he played tonight. 19 minutes, almost 20 minutes tonight.
Why this team is not playing their young point guards with Ricky Rubio, I cannot figure out. I mean, Tibbs might be messing this one up. Don't play Lance Stevenson, Tibbs. Don't play Brandon Rush. Play Tyus Jones. Play Chris Dunn. Don't mess it up, Tibbs.
There was one thing Tibbs did that never made any sense, and it was like he had this like weird, irrational love of the backup guard spot, and he would just let that guy do whatever he wanted. But then everybody else on the team had to follow like the exact plan, or you sat the rest of the game. Like it just didn't. It did, but it doesn't matter for that backup guard. Don't matter.
Backup guard can do whatever he wants.
Tyus Jones, 27 minutes tonight. Shabazz Muhammad, 25 minutes tonight, 22 points. So that's kind of interesting. Shabazz and Tyus, I think, are the candidates to fill in that Zach LaVine minutes. And we kind of went with Tyus Jones so far, but looking at the box score tonight, Shabazz is a little bit better.
Well, and Shabazz is going to be a points guy, right?
Yeah, he's going to give you points always. Yeah, all the time. And then Lance has now entered the conversation. So please don't pick up Lance Stevenson.
Don't do it. Don't do it. I don't care what kind of league it is. Put him in the bid bag.
Do not make that mistake. So I think we're going to finish up here with something that no one's been waiting for, but I've been waiting for. How about that? I've been waiting for this. We're going to rank the most interesting teams going down the second half of the season. And we are going to take those rankings and we are going to do a little deep dive over the next couple weeks or so before the All-Star break to kind of flesh out, what to be expected from these teams coming up in the second half, what you should be looking for, maybe take advantage of. So these would be teams that are most interesting fantasy-wise, and what I mean by that is the most potential for a roster mix-up, a trade, a lot of waiver wire players on that team, a lot of minutes and rotations that could be switching, where you could actually take advantage of that and gain a little bit of an edge, either coming off the waiver wire or making a savvy trade that could that help your seasons. And so I'm going to go top 5. Do you think that's fair? A top 5?
Yeah, with the caveat that over the next few shows, it might grow. Someone might sneak in there based on something that happens.
Oh yeah. If there is a trade more than we're going to be talking about these 5 teams.
Right. So
So you want to
tentative
start?
5. No,
We're
I
gonna start
want,
at 5. We're gonna start at 5.
I want you to start.
Okay, starting at 5. I hadn't planned on starting backwards. This is throwing a whole wrench into my list. I got to look at the bottom of my list now instead of the top. At number 5, I got the Phoenix Suns.
Oh, the Phoenix Suns are in my list as well.
They are interesting. Looking at their roster, you have, obviously, we already talked about the horrible, tragic end of Dragon Bender's season, which might not be actually over, but you got Marquise Chris, who is an interesting young guy. They got a ton of interesting young talent, and they don't know what they're doing, and they don't know where they're going. You got Eric Bledsoe in the mix as a really nice asset for someone who might be interested in him. And I just don't even know where this team's going, and I don't think they know either, which makes this interesting.
Well, and I think they should try to move guys like PJ Tucker, guys like Tyson Chandler, and try to get some more young assets to build that team around. Jared Dudley, if anyone's willing to pay anything for Jared Dudley, move him. Now, does that actually happen? I mean, that's part of the intrigue. But I mean, a guy like Alex Len could be interesting if Tyson Chandler gets moved. I mean, they're a team that could build a lot of intrigue as the season goes on.
And that's why I got them as 5th, because I feel like they don't know what they're doing, and they become a lot more interesting when trades start happening versus the fact that they would just kind of mix it up a lot. I have more faith in the Lakers going after taking their young guys and just throwing them in the starting lineup and letting them see what happens. But the Suns occasionally will do that, but they don't stick to it. And so a trade mix-up is a lot rarer, but a trade mix-up would make this team a lot more interesting. And definitely Alex Len is someone I'm looking at. Maybe Devin Booker has a nice second half. You never know. PJ Tucker and TJ Warren are in the mix. So a lot of interesting guys. Maybe Brandon Knight moves. I think there's a ton of names on one team. Some teams only have like 2 guys who are even interesting. This team's got like 7. So
they were number 4 on my list.
Oh,
you ready for
close.
number 5?
All right, what's number 5 on your list?
The New Orleans Pelicans.
Oh, the Pelicans did not make my top 5.
Oh, see, so we got some intrigue already. I just think that the Pelicans are going to make some sort of move. We heard about the Jahlil Okafor thing the other day, that they're trying to maybe acquire him, which him and Anthony Davis as a pairing is pretty interesting.
It might not be the best long-term move for that team, but it certainly is a move for that team that doesn't sound as terrible as Okafor playing on like Brooklyn or LA or any of these other teams. You know, having those 2 guys play together seems like it could be somewhat interesting, even though I feel like those Anthony Davis and Okafor their positions overlap.
Yeah, maybe a little bit. Another thing that's really interesting is they've been rumored to be kind of looking to move Drew Holiday.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously, that could make the return of Tim Frazier. As far as like a standard league guy, I'm interested to see what Buddy Hield does in the second half, if he can become something. He's already relatively old for a rookie, and so the window is closing in the sense that he needs to make himself something sooner rather than later, or he's never going to be anything. And so I just think there's a lot of kind of little intriguing bits. Does Tyreek Evans get back into being something?
That's who I'm interested in. Oh, Freak Tariq. Love that guy.
Oh, and I mean, I think he's just a supremely talented player.
He's my fantasy kryptonite.
If he can ever get his body healthy.
Yeah, definitely my fantasy kryptonite. I probably own him almost every year, and every year I'm like, why did he's injured? He's injured again. Why did I do this? So he's definitely on a few of my teams this year for just that reason. I can't get away from him. Well, I can't get away from Freak Tariq.
All right, who's your number 4? Let's hear it.
All right, number 4. Most interesting team going down the second half. The Denver Nuggets.
Oh, another one on my list.
Team higher up in the
They're-
rankings,
they-
but
They're actually my number one team because I think
wow.
a ton is going to change with
Wow.
this team.
Wow. That is aggressive, but I think not unfair. Not unfair to rank them number one. You got a lot of more pieces, and you know what? Maybe I ranked Denver too low now that I'm looking at these pieces because you don't know what's going on with Jamal Murray. Something we talked about in the last episode. You got Jokic and Nurkic. What's going on there? Is Nurkic ever going to get a second chance? What's the Kenneth Freed situation? Is Kenneth Freed going to move to another team? Will Barton, Gary Harris sharing time? Wilson Chandler's already said he wants out of there. Is Moutier part of their future? Is he someone who's there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot to talk about on that team.
And
I might have to bump them up in my rankings, but yeah.
And the trade either makes them super interesting or makes it so much more complicated because they already have a ton of moving parts. Ooh, what if this guy got big minutes? He could be interesting. What if this guy got big minutes? He could be interesting. And so if they trade a guy or two for another interesting piece, that just further complicates it. Or they could move 2 or 3 or 4 of their pieces and maybe a draft pick or two and actually get someone who is big. And that would be really interesting.
I feel like this is a team that needs to do multiple moves because you got to figure out your guard situation. Jamal Murray looks like someone who you could, build around. Gary Harris also seems like someone you could build around. So you don't need someone like Jameer Nelson. You don't need someone like Will Barton. And then what does that make Emmanuel Mudiay? And then in the middle, you have Danielle and Wilson Chandler, and then Kenneth Freed. You're like, well, those guys can't all play together. That's didn't work over the last 3 or 4 years. It's not going to work again this year. Those guys have enough value to go play on a contender right now. All 3 of those guys. You're right. This could be probably the most interesting team. I think, though, when it comes to trades, when it comes to the NBA and trades, everybody gets hyped up and nothing ever happens.
I don't know that anything's going to happen. But if any team is screaming for a trade, it's Juancho Hernangomez, who I think could be an interesting, at least role player in the league. And he can't even barely sniff any minutes because they just have so many bodies, so many guys.
Yeah, there's a lot that can happen there. I actually regret putting them fourth.
They are my number one team. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
I spoiled that.
You've convinced me to move them up in my rankings. I'm going to move them to third.
All right. Phoenix was my number 4 team. So you want to go with your number 3?
You do your number 3. Your number 3 team.
Oh man, my number 3 team. It's the San Antonio Spurs. Psych.
What?
I'm pulling that one back. It's not really the Spurs. My number 3 team on the interesting scale is probably the Miami Heat.
Oh, interesting.
So we're going to solve the Chris Bosh saga here coming up, which means Chris Bosh is going to be cut. So that's going to be an interesting storyline because it's coming back around. They had to wait a year with him not being able to play before they could move his contract off their books. And so that whole story is going to be brewing back up again.
It's a shame. That's probably the biggest tragedy of the last couple of years is Chris Bosh. Sad.
I heard some craziness that they have to get an independent doctor to say that he can't play anymore to get him off the books, which they think is going to happen. But then I heard that they think there may be a doctor or two out there who will clear him to play if he's relatively healthy. And so he could play for someone else.
I just don't want to see that guy die on the court. It's incredibly sad that he can't play the game that he's amazing at. And even though he was in the on the dark side during the 3 banana boys down there in Miami, he was at least probably the most likable out of the 3. He just seems like a weird, goofy dude. I'd rather see him sadly retire than die during a game. So
I don't know that he can. I've said this in the past. If you picture, like, you ever see a kid draw an alien?
yeah, I've
Okay.
seen children's drawings of aliens.
Doesn't Chris Bosch look exactly like that? Except for instead of being green, he's a different color.
He's a weird, long-necked, pterodactyl-looking dude.
Like, if you have a 6-year-old son, have him draw an alien, put it up next to Chris Bosch's picture. I bet you it looks pretty similar.
I want to find. There is a cartoon that I think everyone should go and Google and download. And it is,
All right.
I'm trying to figure out what it's actually called. It is something about Chris Bosch being a time traveling wizard of some sort.
Oh, you're making this up now. Is this your cartoon? Is this yours?
I wish I could take credit for this. It is something absolutely ridiculous that I stumbled
This
upon.
is Mike's new segment. It's called Mike Plugs His Own Cartoon.
It's called Adventures of Chris Bosch in the Multiverse. So go out, Google that. Chris Bosch wandering around the multiverse, saving the world, saving the multiverse, not just the world, the multiple universes, no big deal. And also playing for the Miami Heat at the exact same time. It is one of the weirder things you will see, and probably the only thing that made me not dislike Chris Bosch when he was playing with LeBron and Wade.
So, enough of the Chris Bosch talk, okay?
All right.
Back to what makes them super interesting. They're probably going to try to move Goran Dragic. And anytime a team gets a new starting point guard, that's interesting, right? Plus, this is a team with some guys who, given a larger role, I just kind of want to see what they can do. Tyler Johnson being one. Josh Richardson, seeing if he can get that shooting percentage back up like we talked about in the last show. I'm not super interested in Dion Waiters. I'm interested to see if Rodney Magruder is a real NBA player, which doesn't have a lot to do with fantasy, but just for the long-term strategy of the Heat. I just think they got some kind of under-the-radar bubbling storylines there.
So yeah, the Miami did not make my list, and I'll say I think you make some valid points of why they're interesting. I also think we've kind of seen all those guys play enough extended minutes to get a gist of what they're at. Now the rotations could change, and someone could actually bump up into heavier minutes, and that could change the rotations and the outlook of those guys. But I think you kind of know what's going on the Miami Heat, and so they didn't make my top 5.
If Dragic gets traded, I'm interested to see Tyler Johnson starting point guard, what that turns into.
That becomes interesting, and I wish Winslow was still healthy, because that'd be interesting to see him try to play point guard as well.
Yeah, no, they would be a little more interesting with Winslow.
So my number 3, which I've demoted to number 4 and put Denver at number 3. So my actual number 4 is the Orlando Magic.
Oh man, again, you're taking all my good ones. That was my number 2.
Oh, geez, you don't. My number 1 and number 2, I'm not even sure you have on your list.
I don't.
Oh
so this is interesting. This is a good shake-up here.
We got 8 teams to cover now. So similar reason to Miami, except for I think there's guys with bumps in playing time that could to make this a lot more interesting. So if Vujovic or Ibaka moves, what does that do to Bismack Biyombo? Does that put him in a starter role, in a 30-minute role? When we've seen Bismack Biyombo play starters minutes in Toronto, he was a force to be reckoned with when it came to rebounds and blocks. That became incredibly interesting automatically. What's going on with Elfrid Payton? Is that guy just completely, utterly inconsistent, or does he have a nice second half? He's actually had really nice second halves in previous seasons, so it's someone to watch as well. Aaron Gordon getting hyped off of his dunk contest could possibly have a great second half, or he could just continue to do what he does now. I like the ceilings of the guys on this team more than I like the ceilings of the guys on the Miami Heat. Yeah, I like the ceiling of Bismack Biyombo, Aaron Gordon, and Elfrid Payton. I don't know where Serge is going. I don't know if he's part of this team. I don't know what Vujicic's up to. I just don't know what they're going to do because this team as it exists does not actually work.
And this is a team that is always trading. They're always making moves, aren't they?
They're always making bad moves.
Yes, I mean, we can already see that Serge Ibaka trade was terrible. They traded their best player for Serge Ibaka, who's now not their best player.
Yeah, who was thriving in a system that had 2 of the top 5 players in the league taking up all the good defense and all the attention.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. The center thing is super interesting in the sense that Vucevic is all offense and Biyombo is all defense, I think. And if you could somehow make that one player, that may be the best center in the NBA.
Yeah, I don't want to see
that way.
Weird experiments they're doing in Orlando for that. I'm not interested in that.
The things that make them really interesting to me is I think they make some sort of trade, and it's probably not a great one for them. That's usually just seems to be their MO. Aaron Gordon was a guy who got a ton of hype, and I think Frank Vogel has miscast him as a small forward. So I'm interested to see if they move Ibaka and let him play power forward, what he can actually be as a power forward, which could be super, super interesting. Even in fantasy, he could easily get the steal and the block a game. Steal, block, and a 3, kind of be that 1-1 threat.
Yeah, he could be some sort of hybrid version of Blake Griffin and Paul George, just like, they thought he was going to be Paul George, which is kind of a bit ridiculous, but he's definitely more of a Blake Griffin body type. A little bit leaner, a little bit quicker, a little bit smaller. I want to see him thrive because the skill set there is it just seems like there's so much potential there that he could be really, I think his ceiling is future. It could be all Eastern Conference All-Star in his career, but he could also just be a role player.
And the other guy I'm really interested in is Hezonja. I mean, is this guy ever going to be anything? And I don't think we know the answer to that question, and I don't think he's ever gotten the minutes to even give us a glimpse.
No, he's buried, so we just haven't seen enough of him. You would think you would see more of him if he was something, but coaches are weird like that.
Well, and I mean, if we just say, okay, see ya, Jody Meeks, you're not getting any minutes, and CJ Watson, you're kind of sitting out for a bit, and DJ Augustine, you're not getting too many more minutes. We're gonna see what we got in Mario Hezonja.
I think that's fair. That's why Orlando is on my list. Who's left on your list?
That was it. I only had 2 left.
Oh,
or you said them both already.
So my 3. Suns at 5.
Your 3 was my 2.
Orlando at 4 and Denver at 3 now because you convinced me to move them up. And
yeah, Denver was my Denver and Orlando were my 1 and 2.
Oh. All right. My 1 and 2 are completely
you
different.
ate my list.
Well, sorry, man.
Oh, let's hear it.
So
I'm ready. Let's do
number
this.
2 is the Los Angeles Lakers. For the reasons we've talked about earlier tonight and last show, the minutes could get interesting there. Now, this could be also something we talked about in the last show, and I believe this is where your opinion lies, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but Luke Walton could never figure out or never want to figure out what the real rotation is here. And everybody ends up playing 27 minutes a game like they currently are, and it doesn't get interesting whatsoever, and nothing exciting happens. It also, that would be the boring, crappy ending. The other result could be they do feel something out with a rotation. They got Zubac going and D'Angelo Russell going and Brandon Ingram going, and something clicks, and all of a sudden these guys are popping off 35 minutes a night. They're starting to get hot. They're starting to play really well together as a young core, and that becomes something that you can make a pretty good fantasy move, considering a lot of those guys are either close to the drop zone or on your waiver wire.
I said it in my last Bilo article for #basketball that I'm trading for D'Angelo Russell. I'm writing another one. Finish up this week here, and if it wasn't cheating, I'd put him on again. I think that he's really going to kind of take a step forward here in this post All-Star break period. Other than that, I'm not super excited about any Lakers storyline, just because I think Lou Williams, Nick Young, some of these veteran guys kind of clog the way for these young players. But I can see it. You can see the interestingness.
It's there. I think it's high risk, high reward. It could be easily the most boring and or not shouldn't have even been on the list, but I think it could be also very interesting. So we'll adjust our rankings based on who's the teams that are on both of our lists. But I can't believe this team wasn't even on your list. My number one most intriguing team, Philadelphia 76ers.
Oh no.
How are you not intrigued of what's going to happen when Ben Simmons comes back?
Does Ben Simmons come back?
I'm betting, once again, high risk, high reward. I'm betting that he does. I'm betting that he plays hard minutes and that they figure out a way to get him going with Bob Covington and Joel Embiid, and Nerlens Noel gets weird, and somehow TJ McConnell is valid for some reason, and they get rid of Jahlil Okafor. And then you got Saric coming off the bench, and you're like, oh, this could be sixth man of the year. Or it could just, kind of be really disappointing and everybody plays limited minutes, and it could be not that interesting. But we just don't know what Ben Simmons is going to bring.
Another
Joel Embiid brought a lot. Was if he gets unleashed, plays back-to-backs, plays 30-some minutes a night.
I want to hear your Joel Embiid thoughts, because this has been pretty interesting to me. They basically said when he hurt his knee that he was going to be back in relatively short order. He might miss a game or two. You know how many games he's missed so far?
I do not. Quite a few.
Well, let me get you. Yes, sir. Let me get you.
It feels like quite a few at this point.
It has been quite a few. And all they keep saying is it has been 2, 4, 6. It has been 6 games. Then he played in 1 and he missed 3 before that. So he has played in 1 of their last 10 games. And they keep saying he's close to returning, but then another 2 days passes and he's out. And another 2 days passes and he's out. And so this could be a true sneaky, he may really be hurt worse than they're letting on.
True. It could be the opposite. It could be a nice way to tank while healing your, potential superstar through the All-Star break before your other potential superstar comes back, and you can give them some time together while picking up a nice draft pick in a deeper draft. We don't know what's going on in Philly, I guess, don't we? Which does make it intriguing.
And here's another intriguing thing to think about that has nothing to do with fantasy. If you're Philly and you get the first pick or a top 5 pick or wherever the pick lies, what do you draft?
What do you? Yeah. Other than best player available, let's say there's a lot of good players available. You kind of got a 3-and-D, probably another 3-and-D wing, and go non-traditional Ben Simmons at point guard, or you go maybe the point guard route, and you have 2 guys who can handle the ball. You do need a backup point guard anyway, but 2 guys who can handle the ball on the court with Ben Simmons and another point guard. I don't know. You can kind of go anywhere. It's a great problem to have, right? You can go anywhere.
Just don't go for another center. Okay, I mean that's obviously,
don't get another center.
That's obviously the one ticked off the list, but they got some intriguing young players at kind of every position.
Yeah, the process, man, it works.
So, I mean, the whole we're tanking for another great draft pick. It's like, you already got a ton of young players as is. Like, I get that you want more, but
I mean, get one more if he pans out great. If he's good, and you got too many pieces, trade for a superstar. It's the great problem to have too many assets, even though they're obviously going to get, you know what, they'll probably get 60 cents on the dollar for Jahlil Okafor, but when it comes to like the rest of Okafor's career, they probably will be a little closer to 90 cents on the dollar, because I don't think Jahlil Okafor is capable of being a new school type of center in the mold of Embiid or Miles Turner.
He's Nick Vucevic.
Yeah,
at best. That's what he is.
There's just no future in the league for someone who plays like that anymore.
And that's not an indictment. I mean, Vucevic is a good player. But,
yeah,
I mean,
that guy starts and could start on quite a few teams.
But
there's a place for him in the league. It's just he's not the superstar you're looking for.
I totally agree with all that. Another thing that interests me about the 76ers, and this is probably the last thing I'll say, is, does the process win them a championship? Now, this is going down the line, obviously, but in 2 or 3 years, could you see this as a title contending team?
I think a lot of people forget, when you look at the teams who are contending now, how many years it took superstars to come into their own. Talk about KD and Westbrook. Even talk about LeBron. LeBron did it quicker than most people ever have. It does take multiple years for young guys to mold into someone who can take their team deep in the playoffs.
Oh, I think that maybe next year the biggest step they take is to be a playoff team.
Yeah, and I think that's saying that's a big step. I don't think that's the next step. I think that's a big step.
And that's what I mean. I don't think they're even a serious contending, like a Boston Celtics contending this season team until 2020.
No, I don't. That would even be, to me, a little bit early in the timelines. Just looking at how young those guys are, because it's hard to go from bad to good, but it's even harder to go from good to great.
I'm totally with you there.
You got to be great to contend.
And so that's the long-term storyline I'm really most interested in following. Is the process has worked in the sense that you have a ton of young talent. Now can the process work to actually make you into something?
Yeah, does that translate into a real contender? Right. That's a valid question. So yeah, I think that is it for this evening, for this episode of Watching the Boxes. Those are the teams. Turns out we had way more than 5, but we will be going in depth on those teams before the All-Star break, probably into the All-Star break as well. We might have a special All-Star treat for everybody if everybody plays their cards right.
Mike will come to your house and make you Rice Krispies. No, that's not it.
Yeah, I will come to your house and I will watch the All-Star game with a lucky viewer who pays for my flight to a warmer place other than Chicago. As long as you live in a warmer location.
Is Pennsylvania warmer than Chicago, or are they the same?
It's probably similar. I would put my money on Chicago being colder. We sneak into that Arctic vortex that's been sneaking down.
All right, so I'm eligible to win this. I'm excited.
Yeah, if you would like to pay for my flight out and food and video games, that'd be perfect.
Oh, we can have nachos and play NBA 2K while you're here.
Perfect. Then we watch the All-Star game and bet on the dunk contest. My favorite things to do.
Man.
I'm gonna let everybody in on a All-Star tradition. So we will get to that closer to the All-Star break.
All right, it sounds good, and I am excited for it all, Mike.
Perfect. You got anything to plug before we go?
Yeah, check out my forthcoming Buy Low article, which should be out by the end of this week.
Everybody go to hashtagbasketball.com and check that out. Where can we find you on Twitter?
You can find me on Twitter at Watsy4444.
And you can find me at Watch the Boxes, all one word, on Twitter. If you like what you're hearing, you want to give us some feedback on the show, please tweet at us. And even better yet, rate the show, give us a review. Those reviews help us in the rankings, help people find the show, or tell a friend in your keeper league that we're talking about keeper stuff and he needs to tune into the show and download it immediately. That would be great for us. It helps us keep this podcast going. Tyler, thanks for joining me.
It was a pleasure as always, Mike.
Beautiful. And everybody out there, have a good one. We will see you next week.